Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, Mheshimiwa Waziri Mkuu, mawaziri, wafanyabiashara na watu wengine walipwa. When I was told that I was going to speak to business people, I prepared a speech for business. Then later on I was told to say, no, you are going to speak only on oil. Oh, so I was wondering how to do it. But last night I asked permission from Her Excellency. She said, wewe sema maneno yako yote. Kwa hiyo namshukuru. But now, my decision to prepare a comprehensive talk has been strengthened by the confusion of my son, the one who was here. Mweheire, the one who was speaking, the one of the Stambik. Oh, he's very worried about this, about that. And I know why he's worried. Because his bank is always confused. Because, anyway, let me go on with my speech. Your Excellency, the challenge before Africa today is an old one. It is the challenge that has faced man for the last 4.5 million years, since man evolved from the lower primates to the Homo sapiens species with a superior brain, walking on 2 legs, and with a hand that can hold tools and do work. Since that time, man has been oppressed by the two phenomena: oppression by nature and oppression by fellow man. The latter phenomenon included oppression in the form of slavery, feudalism, colonialism, dictatorships, etc. The former included suffering from diseases, drought, hunger, floods, pests, etc. However, man, being the wise mammal he had become since 4.5 million years ago, he has been using his superior brain and his work-capable hands to find solutions to those oppressive phenomena. Starting with oppression by nature, man has been using 3 tools to ameliorate the situations. These have been science and technology, philosophy, and strategy. Science and technology meant understanding the laws of nature, such as gravity, pressure, magnetism, electricity, etc., and using them to solve his problems. Philosophy involves the understanding of man and his behavior, and on the side of economics, understanding what stimuli can make him work most devotedly or otherwise. The strategy involves arrangements that can assist or inhibit man in his efforts to create wealth and overcome poverty. Man everywhere has been making progress on the front of combating oppression by nature, but at different paces. Some zones of the world moving faster than others on account of some identifiable reasons. 1.5 million years ago, man invented fire. Fire enabled man to solve so many problems: to cook, to roast, to fry, to light, to warm oneself, etc. This enabled man to go from trees and start living in caves, which were more comfortable than the former, because he could now warm the caves, which were too cold for human habitation, and expel the darkness from the caves. 10,000 years ago, he started domesticating crops. And between 8,000 BC and 2,500 BC, he started domesticating animals, livestock. In terms of philosophy, societal ideas evolved from metaphysics, predestination, and so on, to the understanding of man's ability to influence his destiny by working. Meanwhile, especially in Europe, society was evolving. As Karl Marx pointed out, by the time he wrote in 1848, society had gone through 4 social systems of the primitive society, the slave state, feudalism, and capitalism, and was at that time entering the era of socialism and communism. The best crucible of understanding this phenomena of social evolution is the onset of the French Revolution in 1789. By this time, France, and maybe other parts of Europe, was a 4-class society, which were the feudalists or the aristocrats that lived on rent from land, the peasants that were serfs on the land owned by the feudalists and had to surrender a part of their harvest to the landlords, the new class of the middle class, the bourgeoisie, and that's what Mohiri should understand. I didn't know that it's God who told me to write this way. That lived on profits, the difference between the cost of inputs and the production of a good or a service and the price of the final product. These were manufacturers, traders, service providers, etc. And also the new class of the working class, the proletariat, who no longer owned anything except their labor, which they sold to the bourgeoisie in return for wages. This is how you, the businessmen, come on the scene. You are a historical phenomenon. Because this is what developed Europe. Europe was changed by the middle class. All these other people were there, feudalists, kings, what have you, they were there, the Pope, they were there. But the new force in Europe, which made Europe go ahead and we stay where we are now, was the middle class. And that's what That's why I was very happy. Oh, you want me to talk to the middle class? I was very happy. But there is enough. You know, the slave trade, nani walikuwa wanauza watumwa ni wale wale. Which was part of what they call primitive accumulation of capital. Genocide, etc. However, on the positive side, the middle class, being interested in profits, apart from looking for raw materials, they also needed markets. Markets. Middle class, markets. When you produce, where do you sell? This is the biggest problem of the middle class in Africa. How can you produce if you are not sure of the market? The more buyers you get, the better the business. That is how the bourgeoisie in France propelled the anti-feudal revolution of 1789, which included the de facto balkanization of France. Although France had been one kingdom for a long time, ever since 842 AD, there were nevertheless internal fiefdoms. Although France was one kingdom for a long time, but there were internal provinces. You couldn't go from one province to the other province without tax, without paying tax. Internally, within France, although it was one kingdom, but there were internal taxes called tile or something like that in Spanish, in French, T-A-I-L-L-E, on goods being traded in the form of inter-province trade. This, of course, disadvantaged the trade so much. Who was benefiting from these taxes? The answer, the feudal lords. At whose expense? The answer is at the expense of the bourgeoisie, the middle class, and the French people in general, because those taxes made goods more expensive, slowed down the rate of growth of the companies, which affected their ability to create jobs, and also slowed down the rate of growth of those companies in expanding the tax base. So, if the companies don't sell, they don't expand. If they don't, if they sell but not enough, and if they don't expand, how will they create jobs? And if they don't create jobs, then where will the government get taxes? Because the government must get taxes people who are working. When it came to the fragmented Germanic populations of what became Germany later, and the Latin populations of what became Italy later, because by this time there was no united Germany. There was no united Italy. And I want to show you the role of the middle class, how they helped. The fragmented Germanic populations of what became Germany later, and the Latin populations of what became Italy later, you see again the role of the business interests working for the integration of those peoples and countries. It is the middle classes who worked for the unity of these countries, to unify those countries. That's why I was very happy to talk to you. Not just about oil and these small things. In the case of Germany, it had the big farmers known as the Junkers. It's written Junkers, but it's pronounced as Junkers. In the German kingdom of Prussia, one of the 39 kingdoms into which the Germanic people were divided, that pushed for the unification of Germany. By 1870, Germany was divided into 39 kingdoms. It is the business classes who said, we want to unite this market, who caused the unity of Germany. That effort was achieved in 1870, following the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. The unification of Italy was not one country until 1860, following efforts by people like Henry Cavour of Piedmont and Garibaldi. Earlier, in 1776, the British American colonies, again led by business interests, had liberated themselves from the rule of the British King George III. Their slogan, when they poured British tea in the sea at Boston, was, "No taxation without representation." Again, a middle-class demand. The leaders of this movement, George Washington and others, correctly decided to unite the 13 British colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland. It decided to unite the 13 British colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, etc., into the nucleus of the United States. This one you say today, the one which people are worshiping now instead of worshiping God. They're worshiping the United States. That by 1945 had become the most powerful country in the world. This country, USA, was created long after our countries over here. Uganda, Buganda, Bunyoro, Rwanda, Mirambo, the chiefdoms of Karagwe, much older than the US. But now the US is much stronger. Why? Because it was started on new ideas of partly the middle class, the business class. Just next door, you had the older Spanish colonies of Latin America and Brazil that had belonged to Portugal. Instead of uniting, their leaders preferred balkanization, remaining fragmented. Today, with the help of television, you can see the different products of the two laboratories of history, one in North America and one in South America. In North America, you have power and prosperity. There are other internal challenges notwithstanding. In Latin America, you have weakness, poverty, insecurity, and desperation. You saw those people walking to the US. You have seen them on TV. Those are Latin American countries. Latin America is very rich in terms of natural resources. That's what I was saying last night. Mali asili sio biashara. Natural resources. Natural resources are not business. They are not wealth. Latin America is very rich. A lot of water, a lot of forests, a lot of minerals, but people are very poor. Why? Because when you start a business in Honduras, it can't succeed. Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Panama. Huwezi kufaulu kibiashara in those fragmented markets. And one of the reasons, of course there are other reasons, but one of the reasons is you don't have enough market. You don't have enough market. In North America, you have power and prosperity. Thousands of desperate people walking on foot for thousands of miles, going to the success story of history, the USA from the failed experiment of history of Latin America. The laboratories, the two laboratories are there. One laboratory, the US. The other one, Latin America. When it therefore comes to Africa, particularly East Africa, we cannot say that we are short of examples of what needs to be done in the last 500 years of the long human history. The question is, if you do not ensure the availability of some factors, including the availability of a large market, how will business grow? Secondly, the question is, if business does not grow, how will you create jobs? How will you ensure the production of goods and services that you need to import substitution and also for export promotion? How will you expand the tax base to get enough money for the government to provide adequate services to the people, including the building of the infrastructure itself? How will you solve this? If business doesn't grow, how will you solve all those problems? By 1986, when the NRM took power after an armed conflict of 20 years, 1966 to 86, the economy of Uganda had collapsed and had been totally informalized. Colonialism and the immediate post-colonial years had seen the emergence of a small enclave, that Ironeno, enclave economy. That's what we were using in the university in the 1960s. By that time, we had diagnosed this problem. And that's what Yoweri is talking about. He's talking about an enclave economy. Enclave economy of modernity, a small island of modernity, surrounded by a sea of backwardness. The writers of that time were describing that small economy as the economy of the 3 C's and 3 T's. The three C's were cotton, coffee, and copper. That was Uganda in the 1940s, 50s, and so on. 3 C's: coffee, cotton, copper. And 3 T's: tobacco, tea, and tourism. That's how they were describing our small island of mambo ya kisasa imezungukwa na hali ya duni. Villagers without income, without what? Wamezunguka katika island katika ziwa ka modernity. Electricity, simu, some these were copper, cotton, and cotton. It was only by 1986, 2 of the 3 C's had totally collapsed. These were copper and cotton. It was only coffee that was still limping on with the export of 2 million bags per annum of 60 kilograms each. Except for tobacco, the other 2 T's had either disappeared completely, e.g. tourism, or shrunk greatly, e.g. tea, which had gone from 23 million kilograms to only 3 million. The word enclave means island, and the enclave economy therefore means an island of modernity surrounded by a sea of backwardness, e.g. peasants only working for the stomach, that some people call subsistence farming. The good luck for Uganda was that what became the NRM party was initially a student movement in the 1960s, some of them active here in Uganda. Tissue. During that long period, Tissue. During that long period, we had time to study and also see in practice the impacts of efforts. During that long time, we had time to study and also see in practice the impact of efforts for socio-economic transformation, positive and negative, by the different policy stimuli or disstimuli, if we can coin such a word. On account of that, especially our decision to encourage the private sector in Uganda, including bringing back the Indians who Idi Amin in his ignorance had expelled, being socialists notwithstanding, has enabled the economy of Uganda to grow at the rate of 6.5% per annum for the last 35 years. The economy could have grown much faster if it was not for the opportunists among us, the careerists, and the corrupt among us. This limited growth has transformed Uganda from a land into a land of surpluses, while in 1986 it was a land of shortages. We had shortages of sugar, salt, soap, textiles, paraffin, etc. The whole economy had been informalized into a magendo, speculation, black market, and shortages economy. It is now the opposite. Everything is in surplus: sugar, milk, maize, bananas, soap, other industrial products such as cement, steel bars, cooking oil, etc. The problem is the market. In order for these businesses to continue growing, we must access more of the internal market by the population acquiring more purchasing power, because part of the problem is that the people don't have money in their pockets, so they don't buy. That's one problem. The goods are there, but they don't buy enough. And also our manufacturers deepening the industrialization process. Although we say we have surplus milk today, our production having grown from 200 million liters in 1986 to now 2.8 billion liters, it is on account of Ugandans drinking only 60 liters of milk per person per annum. If they were drinking the recommended 210 liters per person per annum, Uganda, with its 43 million people, would need today 9 billion liters of milk per year. We are now crying, maziwa yamezidi, maziwa yamezidi. Maziwa yako wapi? 2.8 billion. But why? The Ugandans are not drinking enough. They are drinking only 60 liters per person per year, while WHO is recommending 210 liters to make sure that you have teeth in your mouth. Your bones don't break. Mifupa imepasuka kwa sababu huna calcium ya kutosha. So although we are now fighting with Tanzania, buy our milk. We have excess milk. Tanzania buy, Kenya buy, Rwanda, but actually the internal market is still there, but it is dormant. Why? Because they don't have money in their pocket. Why? That's another story. Hence, the question of oversupply would not arise. Apart from the purchasing power, there is the issue of deepening industrialization. Ugandans have been crying with the issue of sugar. Tumekuwa tunagombana na jirani zetu juu ya sukari. Majirani wamekataa kuchukua sukari yetu. Marehemu bought some 20,000 from from us, and the Kenyans have been buying, but there's still a surplus. But you will see that it is also an official surplus. Ugandans have been crying with the issue of surplus sugar and surplus sugar cane in some parts of Uganda. Why? It is because Ugandans presently consume 380,000 tons of sugar per annum, while our production is currently 550,000 per annum. This is, however, sugar for chai only. Hii ndio wanazungumzia. Wanasema wameendelea sana, wako na sukari ya chai. How about industrial sugar for use by Coca-Cola, for pharmaceutical industries, like children's syrups? You know, the children, when you give them medicine, you don't give them either the one which is bitter. You give them syrups. That is from sugar. Lakini hawa Waganda hawajatengeneza hiyo sukari. Sukari wanazungumzia ni ile ya chai peke yake. How about industrial sugar for use by Coca-Cola and for pharmaceutical industries? That was none of the business of either either the planners in the Ministry of Finance. Our planners also, sijui hapa Tanzania, lakini kule kwetu, these planners in the ministries, that was none of the business of either the planners in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, and also unplanning. I think they should also add the word. They should add the Ministry of Finance and Planning and unplanning. That will be more accurate. Because if you are planning, why don't you see this? Kama sukari ya chai imeongezeka, na pale jirani kuna kiwanda cha Coca-Cola which is importing industrial sugar. Why don't you plan? Say, and you don't have, the government doesn't have to do it. You just get a private sector person, you support him, and he does what you want. So that's simple. So so that's why I want to be more realistic and talk of Ministry of Finance and planning and unplanning. Or even the business sector of Uganda. Consequently, while crying about surplus sugar, Uganda alone was importing 90,000 tons of industrial sugar. Hapa tunasema sukari imezidi. Upande ule, we are importing 90,000 tons of industrial sugar. In order to make 90,000 tons of industrial sugar, you need to refine 100,000 tons. Now, I don't know how much industrial sugar East Africa imports per annum. So, if Uganda, who have now some surplus sugar, go into industrial sugar, they will supply the Uganda market, but also maybe the East African market also. Then there is the region. So first of all, the internal market, strengthening it by more purchasing power, but also the deepening the industrialization. Then there is the regional market and the continental market. This is where you come in, you the business people. You really need to work with the political class to unequivocally support both the economic and the political integration of East Africa and Africa. Since 1963, I've been a follower of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere on the issue of the political federation of East Africa. My staff later on will give some newspaper, which I had sent one to Marehemu. This was I had. They will give you a copy. That paper was 1963. On the 5th of June, 1963, and you will see it. A federated East Africa would create a united market for the businesses of 200 million people, who will be 401 million by 2050, according to the UN. The political federation would also make it easier to handle issues of insecurity, such as the insecurity in Eastern Congo, Somalia, Mozambique, which affects even the countries that are stable, because we have not and we cannot build wars between these sister countries. Moreover, East Africa is quite homogeneous around the language of Swahili, on top of the shared heritage of the Bantu, Nilotics, Nilo-Hamitic, and Cushitic peoples of this area. Last night, Her Excellency talked of Ntungamo of Biharamulo, I think, that area. But the district where I was born in Uganda is called Ntungamo, in Uganda. And it is from the verb kutungama, when you go up. I think Swahili will say kupanda. Lugha za kule kwetu, kupanda is kutungama. When you go down, is okushuma. I think that's how you have got to Rusumo. You know that Rusumo, the other one in Burundi, Rwanda there, Rusumo, when you are going down, okushuma, when you are going down. So, hawa ni watu wa, sisi ni watu wa moja. It is these similarities and ancient linkages that should enable East Africa to achieve maximum unity in the form of political federation and economic integration. Then we'll go to the CFTA, the Continental Trade Area. I do not agree with Muammar Gaddafi, nor with Nkrumah Osajefo, nor did Mwalimu, on the issue of one government for the whole of Africa. At the continental level, you do not have the same similarities like you have in respect to East Africa and Central Africa. You may even have some irreconcilable contradictions that would not permit the maximum level of integration. However, the common market of Africa is possible and desirable. It would give business a market of 1.4 billion people today that will grow to 2.5 billion by 2050. The two levels of integration, political and economic for East Africa, as well as economic for the whole of Africa, will create a bloc with which we can negotiate durable market access internationally with the USA, China, EU, Russia, India, Japan, Indonesia, etc. You remember the world is Mpankuwe. Give me so that I give you also. Reciprocity. Why all those efforts? Why do we, the freedom fighters, who have been following Mwalimu since the 1960s, why do we insist on this? Why do we continue talking about this? It is on account of our search for prosperity. If the African societies are going to be prosperity, how will they be prosperous? They can be prosperous through business. Business, what does business need? Market. How do you get the market? Create jobs, produce goods and services, a bigger government revenue, tax base, strategic security, strong armies that are able to ensure security and defend us against any and all enemies of whatever potential, taking advantage of our similarities, linkages, and a common history. In my view, this is part of the historical mission of the genuine business class of Africa. Otherwise, if we build a Latin America instead of a United States of America in Africa, we shall condemn our children to the sort of miseries you see in Latin America and even the Middle East, not to mention the harvest time for problems in Africa of today: Mali, Burkina Faso, Libya, Central African Republic, Somalia, Eastern Congo, Mozambique, etc. When we talk of business class, of the middle class, of the bourgeoisie, we should not forget that some of the middle class groups play a parasitic role in backward economies. China has within 70 years gone from being number 56 in the world in 1951 in the size of its economy to being number 2 today on account of the accuracy in analysis of its leaders of this issue of the middle class and also of other issues. Both Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping correctly disassembled the middle class into 4 types, if I remember correctly. When you say wafanya biashara, au wafanya biashara ni wa aina gani? Kwa sababu wafanya biashara wengine ni wazuri kwa afya ya economy ya uchumi wa nchi, wengine ni wabaya. These were the national bourgeoisie, the comprador bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie, and the bureaucratic bourgeoisie. Of all these, the positive bourgeoisie were the national bourgeoisie, that part of the middle class that works to retain blood in Uganda and also to get blood from other countries, legitimately and equitably, to strengthen our economy. These are commercial farmers, manufacturers, service providers for activities that either substitute imports or promote exports. The bad elements are the comprador bourgeoisie, those who work for foreign interests in our economies in lines of business such as Ugandans could take up. These are mainly importers, commission agents, etc. A commission agent iko hapa kuuza bidhaa za wengine. How will he help our economy? The other dangerous group are the bureaucratic bourgeoisie, e.g. the civil servants. These are divorced from production, but are paid by the government and never bother to find out how the government gets the money, nor do they care about the rest of the citizens since they are paid whatever happens. The middle class we need are the national bourgeoisie, the commercial farmers, the manufacturers for imports and import substitution, export promotion, and service providers that either save or earn foreign exchange. Coming to the East African oil pipeline and the business opportunities it offers, I first declare that I have never been intoxicated by oil. Uganda discovered petroleum in 2006. It is now 15 years, but the oil has not been pumped out of the ground. Yet the economy of Uganda is growing. Japan is the 3rd richest country in the world, but it has no oil, no minerals, and no agriculture. It relies on the brains and the skills of its people. So is South Korea and even China. This is not to say that the oil of this region is not important. Oil has been important and will continue to be important. Oil transformed the very poor countries of North Africa and the Middle East into very affluent societies on account of the petrodollars that started flowing in that area following Gaddafi's activism for higher oil prices and the Arab-Israel War of 1973. There is now awareness that some uses of petroleum generate gases that create a blanket effect in the atmosphere that warms the temperature of the globe, melts the ice sheet and the glaciers, and causes the seas to rise and unpredictable rain patterns. That, however, is not the fault of oil. It is the fault of the misusers. Uganda, therefore, supports the movement towards cleaner energy sources, hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, and even nuclear, and we are preparing for all. 2 points are, however, clear. First of all, we shall use fossil energy for another 40 years. So you don't have to worry that the oil is about to run out of demand, because as I will show, there will always be demand for oil. In fact, although I'm never an opportunist, I cannot avoid not seeing an opportunity for some of us that have entered the nightclub when the notice for banning nightclubs was proclaimed. New nightclub goers will not book in, and hence we shall have the nightclubs to ourselves. You see, this campaign against oil is actually good for us, because many companies are fearing to invest in new oil ventures. But for us who are already there in the nightclub, since oil is still in demand, the price is now going up. I hear it has now gone to $83. Could this not be the reason for the price of oil going up? The climate salvation efforts are targeting correctly the use of coal for power generation and the internal combustion engines that should be replaced by electric engines. These are not the only uses of oil. There are safer uses of oil, and these are car tires. Car tires. These synthetic tires are much stronger than the rubber ones. So even if they stop the use of petrol to drive cars, the need for car tires will remain. Now, I've never taken any oil for medicine, but bitumen, asphalt, kupiga lami, hizi lami, cosmetics, detergents, packages, kufunga vitu. Here, the environment issue is no longer greenhouse gases, but waste disposal. If we can get a waste disposal, a good waste disposal policy, then the oil will be here forever. We shall stop using it to drive cars, because that's a bad use. But it will be used forever for all these purposes. Here, the environment issue is no longer greenhouse gases, but waste disposal. Can we not perpetually recycle some of those for reuse? Can't we go on recycling them? They can answer that. Therefore, Tanzanians, Ugandans, all the global citizens, the East African pipeline business is a good, durable business. It will create jobs during construction. Last night at yesterday in the press conference, we saw that the pipeline would take $1.3 billion, but 600 million of that is for the construction. And then the other 270 something is on the factory which they will put in Igunga to heat the sections and so on. And then internal transport. So almost 900 million will be spent, mainly in Tanzania actually, because the portion of Uganda is small. But I don't mind, because many of my relatives are in Tanzania, so. Other service providers will also be able to supply. Now, the crying of Mwehide You see, I don't want to divert myself, but what he's talking about is the enclave economy. In Uganda, with these wonderful people, some of them are here, the politicians, forget about the civil servants, those ones are out of the question. Kwa sababu hawajasikia, do you call it injili, the gospel? Hawa watumishi wa serikali hawajasikia injili ya ukombozi. So I don't even quarrel with them because they are not part of me. Watu nagombana nao ni wanasiasa wenzangu who are part of the movement, who should have known. Because you see, like for instance, until 7 years ago, 68% of the homesteads in Uganda were in what they were calling subsistence economy. Uchumi to produce for the stomach only. Uchumi wa kuzalisha mali ya tumbo peke yake. 68%. So when you see these people here, honorable minister, honorable what, they have got 68% of their people. Wanatumikia tumbo peke yake. So what this young man is saying, this Yoweri is the son of my schoolmate. If 68% of the people are out of the economy, out of the money economy, then what do you expect? What that Stanbic Bank should be working for? Okay, work for oil, all right. But also work to get the 68% into the money economy. That's what we should be working about. So when this young man comes here, pension funds in California, I don't know where. Now, because of my struggle with these people, I had to involve the army. The army, chukua mbegu kwa wale watu ambao wamelala, waanze kulima kahawa. Because of that struggle now, recently, they brought a new, you call it takwimu? Is it called takwimu? Statistics. They brought a new takwimu to her. Now, manyumba, these are households. Manyumba ambayo bado yanalala ni 39 kwa 100 from 68. You can imagine. After 2013, when I involved the army, 68% of the Ugandans were just watazamaji wa mpira. As far as the economy is concerned. So, now how can you bring pipeline, what? But how will they come? They're outside. You should bring them in. That's why I had to involve the army to kuchukua mbegu ya kahawa, ya matunda. We called it Operation Wealth Creation. That's how we were able to bring the watazamaji from 68% to now 39%. So I think we should look at that along all this whole pipeline. That's what I was discussing with Her Excellency yesterday about mifugo, kwa mfano. Because 1986, our Uganda walikuwa wana kampani yao ya taifa ya maziwa. Walikuwa wananunua unga ya maziwa kutoka Denmark. Wanaleta unga ya maziwa, kufika pale Kampala, wanaweka maji ya Victoria, wanapaka chapa, Uganda Dairy Corporation. The only Ugandan thing there was maji. But because of the struggle now, you hear that they have more milk now, surplus, so what they call surplus milk. So I think here along this route, if there are people who are just asleep, manyumba. We should work them up, produce maziwa so that maziwa chakula so that they sell to these to our wafanyakazi. I'm about to finish. I'm very sorry, Your Excellency. Unlike Japan or Korea or other service providers, will also be able to supply those who work in the oil sector, e.g. hotels, transport, food supply, etc. Unlike Japan or Korea or Saudi Arabia, who either do not have oil or only have oil, East Africa has got everything. Agriculture, minerals, forests, oil, gas, etc. Once the environmental concerns are addressed, the sky is the limit. I thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to put forward a long-held Pan-African view. Thank you so much.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda. Kwa mara nyingine tena niombe tumpigie makofi Mheshimiwa Rais. Kwa heshima na taadhima, sasa ni kuombe Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, ili nawe uweze kuzungumza na hadhira hii